Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Elizabeth Savillon, and here we talk all things healing, community, and how to embrace our story. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. All of that helps us to grow, as well as I love to hear from you. Also, I am here at High Hill Labs in downtown Orlando, and if you have any production, podcast needs, as well as a venue space, this is a perfect place for you. I love my team here, and they help me just make this show happen. And I'm just very excited for this month because we are turning 4 years for the podcast. And so I can't believe it's that much time. And I feel like when I first started, I would have never thought it would have came and got to this point. And that's just something that when you start something, it's like you just have to continue keeping going and know that your why is what matters, and that is what's going to help you continue, and you'll figure it out along the way. I feel like a lot of us stop to start something because we're like, we don't have this, or we don't look this way, or we put all these like mental blocks for us not to do something. But then when you look back, you're like, you started and you figured it out and all kind of flowed and worked out together. Even with the podcast, in the first 2 years, I remember like the discouragement of feeling like, okay, like it's good, right? Like when you start something, but then it like kind of, gets stable, and then it sometimes goes down and then up, but you're still overall is still growing and it's still going up. And so with anything that you do, just if you have that dream in your heart, do it. And I do want to talk about today of like sometimes us canceling ourselves or stopping from doing something because we feel like we've gone through trauma, or we're not like someone else, or we're not qualified to do something. Because in my own healing journey, and as I have talked about my child abuse and my toxic relationships, I felt like a lot of the time I disqualified myself from being able to do something like this because I felt like my story, what am I going to talk about? Like, there's other people that haven't gone through that kind of stuff. And it's kind of embarrassing. As someone that's a survivor, you people sometimes blame things on the person, on the victim versus the perpetrator. And when people do that, of like saying like, oh, you see, they're just talking about their story and they're making themselves the victim, it's like, I want you to know that talking about my trauma, I have sent the episode that I've done about childhood abuse, and as well as my toxic emotionally abusive relationship, I remember sitting with it for months. I remember sending it to my mentors, to my friends, to my mental health counselor, and being like, how does this sound? Is this too much? Did I say too much? Did I say too little? Did I try to make myself the victim? Like, you think about that, like when you're putting yourself out there. So trust me, it is not something to glorify abuse or to be like, look at me, I'm the victim. Like, no, it sometimes feels embarrassing putting yourself out there. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to do it. It takes a lot of courage to do it because you know the narratives that people have, and you know how society works, that they protect a lot of the abusers. And trigger warning of the topic, but I just wanted to briefly, I'm not someone that talks about pop culture much, but with what happened with Sierra and P. Diddy, that was something that was horrible to watch and so triggering. How I actually ran across the video was on someone's story that just went straight into it, and just the physical abuse that was happening. And that traumatized a lot of people that watched it because they have seen themselves in that position. And it's just very just mind-blowing that just because a video is going out, it's like, oh wow, there's proof. But even in the comments, there's people that are like, why didn't she leave? If it was that bad, it was because of his money. That's why she was with him and she tolerated that. And it goes again, blaming the person that survived that versus actually, you know, talking about, oh, this man is an abusive man and he's not safe, and he's done that to multiple people, and multiple people have come out and have said things, but it was just kind of like paid off, or, put under the rug because of someone's name. And not everybody that has been abused will ever talk about it because of also that fear of how people are going to paint that picture, or that person is not going to get in trouble or taken in account, or nothing's going to happen to that person. And so I feel like it's so sad because, within all of this that's happening right now of like the media and now people are talking about it, who's the person that I'm really caring about? It's her, because she's the one that's getting triggered from everything. She's the one that didn't get the straight apology from this. And even the apology video, have a lot of thoughts on that, because narcissists make it all about them. And when they say an apology, it's about them. It's not even about the person or what they did. Sorry for what? Sorry for what? That's always the thing. It's like, so I feel like this topic is something that goes very well with what I've been talking about, because as we're seeing it in real time of what's happening, I feel like the question should be, how is she doing? How is she even brave enough to like go through this, and seeing all the years of him getting fame and getting all this sort of stuff, and her staying quiet, and her dealing with it in court, and her dealing with it privately. And so, as someone that maybe you will never tell your story publicly, I want you to know that you are not alone, and that there are many women that can relate, and men I know that can relate to this. But telling your story is important, and there are people that are going to believe in you and on your side and championing you, and you're not making yourself the victim for putting and saying your story. You're actually allowing space for other people to share theirs, and you're letting people know, like, wow, like you went through that, but you still survived, and you still are thriving, and you're still continuing moving forward. And so when I share anything on this podcast, I want you guys to know that it has literally been on the back end. Like, I overthink it a million times before even publishing it, or before even thinking about it. And even my producer knows that I'm like, hey, can I listen to that episode? Because I don't know if I said too much or too little. Like, I just am very careful of that, because I want to make sure that it's with the right intent, right? Even though I shouldn't have to think that way. And even though I shouldn't have to be like trying to protect, which I'm not, but it's still like I am not. The intention of why I post what I do is to help other women that were like me, and to give hope to women and men that you can go through hard stuff in life, and that does not have to be your end, and that does not have to be the end of you. And you can still share and create a beautiful life no matter what you have been through. And so I just wanted to share that, because it seems very fitting with what's going on in culture. And I know that that's why a lot of people that have gone through abuse or trauma just start canceling themselves out. And they're like, I can't do that. I can't share that. Like, that's not me. That's for someone else that has like a perfect story. And that's for someone else that has it all figured out. And that's for someone else that didn't go through what I went through. And it's like, no, someone needs to hear your story, and someone needs to hear your voice. And I know, even just so you guys know, that in 2020, when I started this podcast, I was still in that trauma bonded toxic relationship. I just didn't talk about it for that whole year and a half. My first episode that I did technically about it was toxic relationships. And I didn't even talk about the person. I talked about toxic relationships I had been in. And that, once I did that episode, because I had blocked this person, I was getting emails and a lot of thoughts from this person of, hey, like, oh, so you're going to brand yourself as a victim. So you want your story to be that, oh, she went through a heartbreak and she went through childhood abuse and she went, like, that's how you want people to see you. And so imagine someone that has gone through it, right? And that I'm healing and trying to work through it. And I'm getting these kind of questions, and just this manipulation of trying to be like, is that really how you want people to see you? Is that really, like, man? And I'm so glad I didn't listen to that. And I'm so glad that I continued going, because that was my story. And that story is not even about that person. It's actually of the things that I was able to overcome, and the marks that I wear every day, that I have continuously and I'm working through, that I've been able to overcome despite. So that, even I remember my episode of Thank You for Rejecting Me, which was another one, because sometimes I want to say thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that breakup, because it helped me thrive. Thank you so much for that pain. And because then I finally met myself, and I finally got closer to Jesus, and I finally started doing the things that I always wanted to do, because that pivotal moment in my life. Do I wish to go through that again? Absolutely not. And I know that some people say, like, I'm so grateful for all the things that I would go through it again. Like, I don't know if I would go through it again personally. I think that I'm just glad for the lessons because the lessons were essential because I feel like I would have continued repeating the pattern over and over and never got it, you know? So, for you, if you're someone that is maybe thinks that you can't start something or you can't do something and you disqualify yourself, as someone that has gone through trauma, you are your worst critic. You are someone that overthinks things, just always thinks about other people's needs, other people's opinions, and has a lot of fear. And I'm talking about myself, like, has a lot of fear of just putting yourself out there to do the things that you know maybe in your heart are there, but it's just that feeling of not feeling good enough. Like, if I only get this, if I only was like this, and that's not true. That's like your trauma speaking. That's your just the stuff that you're still working through. But there are great stories in society and history of people that have gone through some difficult things, even in the Bible, that they weren't perfect. They had a like ugly past. They had some hard things happen in their life, or they did hard things. They did hurtful things to other people. And they were still able to redeem their story and still be able to have joy and have make an impact to other people's lives. And so those are lies in our heads that sometimes stop us. Those are lies that we believe, but they're not the truth. The truth is that you can start today. You can start making better decisions. You can heal from things that you haven't maybe talked about. You can help other people through your story. You can create your community and do the things that maybe you don't see or a need that you see in your space. You can be that person. And sometimes your vulnerabilities and the areas or your weaknesses, as we call them, are actually your superpowers because those are the areas that God's going to use to connect with other people that are going to be like, man, I look like her and I've been through a lot of the same things. And that gives me hope that I can do it too. And so now I hope that that you guys know that that is my always going to be my why, but also it's because I don't have the perfect story and I never want the perfect story. And I feel like in this past month I've shared a lot of like, I'm still figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out, guys. I'm still figuring it out, like the behind the scenes social media highlight reels versus reality, because and I'm doing it for myself too, because I never want that feeling or that label of like, she's perfect, she has it all together, it's because of this. Is like, no, we all struggle, we all have things in our lives that we are still working through. As I share this podcast, present day, I am working through something in my personal life that I have never been here before. I have never walked through. This is new. This is personal stuff that I'm still trying to process and still trying to work through. And it's hard, and maybe I'll never talk about it or maybe I will, but it's like we all have certain things that we're personally still working through, and that's just being human and that's just life. You have to navigate things. But this episode is really to encourage you to like not let you stop you from doing the thing, not let you to label you when you know that God has called you to do something for him, that God has called you to help other women or help other men or help other kids or help other youth. I know there was this someone that I talked to recently about that she has a heart for like teenagers, because she's like, man, like when I was a teenager, I went through X, Y, and Z. And I wish if they just like knew it when they were teenagers, like that would help them. And I'm like, girl, that's your thing then, like that's the area that God can use you to help, because people need, like the younger generations need someone to look up to that's maybe has relates, in the way, or that you speaks to them. Sometimes I used to think also in the beginning that I had to change my personality or the way that I was, because then people would connect with me. But no, I have stayed who I am. I am like a corny person. I just want you guys to know I'm a corny, bubbly person naturally. And I am a very like, I don't know, like I laugh when it's not appropriate. I like in serious conversations that I'm like, why am I laughing? It's my trauma response. And I am like the extra friend, like the way that I dress, the way that I am. And I wanted to like shut that down of myself. I wanted to be more like cold, more like straightforward, more like people respect me here. Like that's what I need. Like that's the kind of energy that I was trying to give. And I'm like, that's not me though. Like I definitely can build relationships, and that's how I feel like people can connect with me. And I have seen over the years, even when she cultivates that, people have come or I've connected with people that I always prayed for the community that I always prayed for, because I kept with myself and who I was and my story. And maybe it's cringe for other people. Maybe it's cringe that I talk about certain topics because it's like, oh my God, I would never share that. Like, that's okay. That's my calling right now, is to share and be vulnerable and create a space for other people. So you can do it too. And don't cancel yourself out for the things that God has called you to do. And your story is still being written. Your story is still a work in progress, and your story can impact someone else. So you can even write down on a piece of paper, like, here's all the reasons why I wouldn't be qualified to do this, or why I shouldn't. Maybe sometimes even people have talked about like, okay, what if you're a relationship coach, then you have to have the best relationships. If you're a friendship coach, you should have to have the best friendships. Like, and that's not true. Like, I feel like through your own personal experiences, you will be tested in those areas of that you're trying to help other people. So for example, my trauma bonded relationship that was emotionally abusive, for a long time, I didn't want to talk about relationships because I felt not qualified. But I share out of my lessons, and I share out of the things that I learned and through the process of it, never to say I'm an expert. But at the same time, that is what connects with other people. So I hope this encourages you to do the thing this month that you've been wanting to do, to stop canceling yourself out, and whatever voices that you're telling yourself or you're allowing to stop you versus what God has called you to do and who you know that you are, and the gift in your heart that you have to help other people or to speak about a certain topic that maybe is very taboo, and other people aren't going to talk about it. So sometimes our narrative comes from inner thoughts, and our last episode about like our garden, like the garden within our mind and our thoughts, like what we water and what we put into that is what's going to grow. So sometimes you have to step out in faith and have the right people around you to like push you through, but also believe in the things that are in your heart. So I hope that this encouraged you. It was short and sweet, but also a way to kind of start the month off of celebrating of our 4 years. Make sure to leave a review. We are trying to get to 100 reviews. I think we're like 75 right now. So please do so. That helps. That's like a free gift, but that also helps for sponsorships. That also helps for growth of the podcast, and would really appreciate it. So I hope you guys have a great one, and I'll see you next week.